A couple of years ago, when I was deep into collecting for the Xbox 360, I picked up a copy of 2010's Need for Speed Hot Pursuit for like a few bucks. And despite the fact that I was playing the game in 2018 or 2019, I was still blown away by the graphics the 360 was able to output in this game. Now, with that in mind, I was surprised that the game received a remaster for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 in 2020, and later came to the Nintendo Switch as well. We saw this a bit during the Xbox One's generation. Rather than a game being made backwards compatible so you could play your old copies, they would revive them with updated versions. Obviously, the PlayStation 4 lacked this type of backwards compatibility with the PS3 games, and that may have played a role. With a patch last year, the game runs at 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X and PS5, as well as including a slew of other additional content. This is more of a definitive version to me, rather than a true remake to put it up against the original. If you saw my video a couple of weeks ago on Need for Speed Heat, which is the most recent original entry in the series, you may think you've got a good idea of what Hot Pursuit is all about, but you'd probably be very wrong. Now, like Heat and every other Need for Speed game for that matter, this is an arcade racer. However, its presentation and progression vary substantially when compared to the other Need for Speed games released in the past decade. This one was developed by Criterion, who also developed the Burnout series, and the influence really shows. In many ways, this reminds me more closely of a classic Burnout game, just without the signature money tallying crash mode. Having released the open-world game Burnout Paradise 2 years prior to the original Hot Pursuit game coming to the PS3 and the 360, it's somewhat of a surprise to me that this one was a classic sort of return to form for the series. Races are selected directly from a map menu. The game doesn't waste your time driving around to certain waypoints just to start the events like Burnout Paradise and all of the later arcade racers on the Xbox One and the PS4 series did when it came to Need for Speed. There is a free drive option here, but where you can just kind of drive around and do whatever you want with your car. This is somewhat like the free ride in the old MX vs. ATV games where, again, you just drove around and had some mindless fun. This is a bit hidden in the menus, and it's a pretty minor addition to the game because there truly is nothing to do once you're roaming around that world. The real core of the gameplay comes from switching between events on the map, playing as either a racer or the police. For the racing events, it involves mostly literal races or time trial style events, and as for the police, they primarily consist of taking down the racers using equipment or outright brutality, or even just racing to a spot to block a racer from progressing in their race. Without an open world to need to navigate through, you can really clip through these races pretty quickly. All the while, you level up your status as a racer, and then you have a separate status progression as a police officer, each with their own unique XP bars. With each XP milestone, you unlock new vehicles, but considering this game came out in 2010, you have to keep in mind that many of these car models are now well over a decade old. Unlike Need for Speed Heat, there isn't much car customization in Hot Pursuit. You can't tune the cars, instead you get simple options to change the paint styles or create a custom wrap. The biggest complaint I see about this game online is that the progression doesn't actually make you feel like you're moving forward with the game. The cars don't get increasingly better as you unlock more. In fact, you start the game with one of the fastest cars already unlocked and follow this up by soon after unlocking some slower cars. With no way to customize the car's performance, it leaves little reason to use the slower cars unless you have a personal attachment to them or for some reason just like the way they handle. Now, some missions will require you to use certain cars, but when it was left up to my choice, I tended to default to using the same couple cars every time. Another complaint I've seen a fair bit is the way the game cuts away from the race to unexpectedly show a cinematic angle of a crash. Now, this is something that I enjoyed about the Burnout games, particularly Burnout 3 on the PlayStation 2, but here it's a bit distracting to see it happen mid-race and then immediately jump you back into the action. Honestly, throughout my playthrough, I never became 100% comfortable with being ready to take back control of the car when the cutscene ended because this all happened so quickly. And I appreciate that these crash scenes are in this nice slow motion, has an action movie style cinematography to it, but I can't help but wish there was a dedicated button to trigger these replays rather than them happening automatically mid-race. If you've played Burnout Paradise, you're likely very familiar with the great damage modeling that game had. The hits from collisions really left a mark, but the same cannot be said about Hot Pursuit. Since these cars in this game are all real-world cars with official licenses, damage modeling is greatly scaled back, likely as part of the agreement in how car manufacturers want to limit how their cars are seen when they're damaged. Bottom line is this is a game you'd play for a week and put down, and considering you can usually find on sale for $10 or less on the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live, or heck, it's even part of Game Pass, that's not exactly a bad deal. I'd say if you're going to pay $6 or $7 for this game like it's usually on sale for lately, that's worth it, but just don't expect to get a ton of time out of it. However, I will say that if you decide between this or Need for Speed Heat, then Heat is definitely the way to go. Now, Heat doesn't go on sale quite as cheap, but escaping the cops is much more satisfying in that game. Plus, the open world can be an annoyance at times, but it offers a ton more to do. And overall, the progression in Heat is far more satisfying as you unlock parts to upgrade your ride. You can download wraps online to give the car an easy custom look without having to make it yourself. And just overall, there's a ton more tuning that you can do in Need for Speed Heat. If you want the feel of an old arcade racer, a bit of a flash from the past, then Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered is a fun little game. There'll be a few players who will get really deep into it, just like any racer, but with the limited reason to pursue long-term progression, the majority of us will probably move on quickly from this title, so I don't recommend paying more than a handful of dollars for it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.